There's a 50% failure rate in some of these professional exams. Nobody that I talked to could say that they enjoyed the studying experience. So I was pretty sure there was a problem. It seemed to me that the first wave of online learning very much focused on taking an existing 18th century model, so somebody talking and books to back it up, and just putting that online. So that changed the manner of delivery, but it didn't change anything in terms of the effectiveness or enjoyment of the learning journey. Having customers and having revenue is always going to be the best validation for investors.
Deirdre Lyons, founder of ExamFly, thank you very much for joining us in the podcast today.
Thanks very much for having me, Rick.
I'm thinking it's probably the quickest podcast in terms of getting here you've probably ever had to do, right?
Yeah, one flight of stairs, so not too bad.
Tell me a little bit about your journey to now. We're going to obviously jump into ExamFly, but before that, what type of work were you doing before?
Yeah, my background's very much in professional services. So studied law and French in college, trained in tax in PwC, went on to work in wealth management for Davy. So as part of that journey, I did a lot of exams myself, both university exams and then professional exams. Lectured on the side for the Tax Institute for a number of years. I guess I always had an entrepreneurial streak and was always looking for ways to do a bit extra in jobs if I could, or improve processes, be that when I was waitressing or working for the investment company and so on. So I think around, maybe 5, 6, 7 years into my career, I was finding myself reading blogs about startups, books about founders all the time, and something was just a bit of an itch there that I could maybe try something myself one day. So That's a snapshot of,
And I'm guessing when you're in professional services, it's kind of like you need to learn something within a day, a week, and then suddenly you're rolled out to a customer. Ta-da! And I'm guessing that probably gave you a bit of incentive as well to kind of say, we're the consultant here, but we're learning on the fly too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I suppose professional services, they typically operate on a consultancy model where there's bodies of rules, be that law, tax, accounting, that you're trying to apply to particular client scenarios. So learning the theory is one thing, the application is the other, more complex part, both for exams and more crucially in real life. So I think noticing that difference between that applied knowledge compared to, say, school or university, that was really what got me into the learning side in these kind of professional domains. And then I think coming back to the itch to do something myself, in the companies that I worked for, I dealt with a lot of business owners and founders and sometimes startups, and I was always very intrigued by their day-to-day life, even the ups and downs and the problems that they had to solve. So I guess working with them kind of close hand, I was getting to see what it was like on the other side of the table from the business owner perspective, the good and the bad. So I think that was also encouraging me to maybe think about potentially doing something myself one day.
And why did ExamFly come about in terms of why did you feel the problem was worth solving?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think from a product level, it seemed to me that the first wave of online learning very much focused on taking an existing 18th century model, so somebody talking and books to back it up, and just putting that online. So that changed the manner of delivery, but it didn't change anything in terms of the effectiveness or enjoyment of the learning journey. So it seemed that using technology, you could do more to make the learning journey better. From a business model perspective, it seemed that these domains, professional services, the main thing that they sell is the skills of their people, sometimes packaged up into billable hours. And they're big multi-billion domains, law, accounting, tax. So it seemed that if you could come up with a solution that helped people acquire skills in these domains, potentially there was a business model there, as well as the idea for a product being just use tech in smarter ways to make it better. So in a startup, you're just starting off with hypothesis. So those were the two core hypotheses, I think, when we were starting off with ExamFly.
And were you pitching this ideas to colleagues, companies, and kind of going, do you think that's something there? And were you getting enough traction to go, actually, I'm going to do that? And then did you say, okay, I'm burning the ships, handing in the notice, going bootstrap? Or how did that come about?
Yeah, I think we're lucky in Ireland in that there's a very supportive ecosystem if you have an idea. So I was on the Enterprise Ireland New Frontiers programme, and the concept behind that is they give you enough to feed yourself for 6 months and give you a lot of know-how about building an MVP, constructing a business model, and you're encouraged to test your ideas against reality. So in that phase, I had left my job, I had full time to speak to people about the nature of the problem. And at the start, it was more validating that there was a problem. There's a 50% failure rate in some of these professional exams. Nobody that I talked to could say that they enjoyed the studying experience. So I was pretty sure there was a problem. And then as the New Frontiers program went on, I started, I suppose, cobbling together the ideas for what the solution might be. And in the early days, it's always the V1, the very crude version. But even that was getting enough feedback to say, right, I can keep going with this for a bit longer. So you're always trying to take it stage by stage in a startup, validate your initial hypothesis, and then see, can you build on it and push it a bit further.
And then the underlying tech as the enabler, how are you going about that? What's under the hood there?
Yeah, at the start, the two core innovations were for the information intake phase, the thing that's normally done by a talking head PowerPoint or a lecture. We did that through animated explainer videos. So at the time, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos to teach myself about things like history and physics, and I found that the animation really improved the ROI per minute you spent learning about something, because you can represent things visually. And these subjects seemed like things like accounting and tax seemed to have the same characteristics, that they lend themselves to being presented visually. You can show things like ownership of assets, flows of money. So animation, it's not necessarily a high tech thing, but it's an innovative digital media type solution. And then practice. So going back to the point about these subjects being about applied knowledge, to get good at them, you have to be testing yourself, getting things wrong, getting things right, learning from your mistakes. So we started building interactive testing tools and games, some modeled on fruit machines. You're replicating some of the dopamine that they're getting from social media and phones. So those were the two core innovations on the information intake phase and on the practice phase initially. And those core ideas remain, but the underlying tech has evolved significantly over time, with AI now playing a big role in the feature set and in the construction of the product.
Are you able to use that for like kind of recommendations or to kind of personalized learning, or how have you kind of weaved that in?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, the two core promises of AI in education are creation and delivery of high quality learning interactions at scale.
Yeah.
So I think from a business model perspective, a pure content business always had barriers to scale because it's difficult to localize, update, change pure content. Where the way we've built things is very much in a technology first way. All the elements of the learning journey are delivered through digital media and code. So updating, localization is much easier and much more efficient. So you can have, from a business model perspective, some of the scaling properties of software, but applied to a large educational market. And then the second component that you mentioned is more personalized learning journeys. You can make bodies of knowledge much more readable. So, in a traditional learning management system, you might know about the content at a level of it's a video or it's a quiz about X topic. You can make the reading of that much more granular, so you can deliver exactly what an individual student needs at exactly the right time through monitoring their progress through a learning journey and delivering the correct components at the right time. I'm probably oversimplifying that somewhat, but those are the two core promises of AI in education as I see it.
It blows my mind that only 5% of our listeners actually subscribe to the podcast. We've got one favour to ask. Please, can you subscribe to the podcast? If you like our content, you subscribing will make a huge difference to the guests that we can get on the show, and also be a voice for AI applied across Ireland, but doing it the right way. Now back to the show. When you think about the type of customers that you're going after, have you kind of got an ideal avatar now at the moment? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I guess my own background is from the Big Four and kind of these large enterprise customers. So that's actually who we went after from day one. So we now work with most of the large companies, Big Four and top six across Ireland and the UK. And we find there's an alignment there because they're motivated for their learners, their trainees, to have a very positive experience with the subject that they've chosen careers in. They're obviously motivated for them to acquire skills as quickly and as painlessly as possible. There's an alignment now with what's AI going to do to these workforces, to the skill set, and how can we future-proof our workforces. So we've been quite lucky in the sense that we're dealing with large enterprise customers from the get-go. So we've been able to, I guess, get a foothold and get kind of revenue numbers that would have been much more challenging in a B2C context, I think.
And the lovely thing about that is those big four are pretty much around every country across the world, right?
Yes.
So if you start to bag a few testimonials, they're selling it for you.
That's that's kind of,
That's
at least
the
that's
dream.
what we've put in our investor deck anyway.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of similarities from market to market, but then there is individual nuances to different qualifications and different skill sets. So accounting in the US can be very different in some ways, the traineeship paths to the UK and so on. But that's part of the challenge and part of the fun. We've made very good inroads in Ireland and the UK, and we're now over in North America, Paris, launching with our first Canadian customers later this year, talking to customers in the US. So hoping to learn as much as possible about those markets while keeping the core of the offering that's resonated, close at home.
And it was announced a few weeks ago, but I think it was probably really announced a few months ago, the investment round as well. What was that like, raising money, finally announcing it? I'm guessing that would have been a completely new skill set that you'd have to add to your bow.
Yeah, so ExamFly has raised 2.1 million in total, so a pre-seed round of 600,000 and then a seed round of 1.5 million. Again, I feel we're very lucky in Ireland that there's a supportive ecosystem where you can learn a lot about what investors want, how to reach them, how to pitch and so on, and there's so much available online. So the investment process, I guess you're trying to get investors excited about your vision and then give them reassurance that you can actually execute on that vision. So I think our vision of creating a technology-first education company that's aspiring to be the premium learning partner to the global professional services industry, that was enough to get a lot of investors excited, particularly ones that knew the space and knew maybe how outdated the existing learning models were. And then in terms of the reassurance or giving them confidence about your ability to execute, we were fortunate that we had a lot of big logos on our deck from the start. So I think having customers and having revenue is always going to be the best validation for investors. Now, it's not to say that it wasn't bruising. We got a lot of no's as well as plenty of yeses. But I think people say that you're a different person from the start of a fundraising round to the end. And I think that's definitely true. Definitely have a lot thicker skin and hopefully a bit better at not taking things personally.
But I'm guessing it must have been really helpful when they start picking holes at certain areas that maybe you didn't think was a weakness, but then you've now reimagined your core offering based on that. I say in that way, it must be incredible to get.
Yeah, I think investors, a lot of them, we have mainly angels, and a lot of them have, they're seasoned business people themselves, successful in different fields, so they can definitely offer good perspectives. Because particularly in the early days, when one of the things you're trying not to do is run out of money, you can be proceeding with caution as maybe your main driver. So I think when we raise investment, getting some successful founders on board and just hearing their thoughts about how we move faster, how we think bigger, has been really helpful to me anyway as a founder.
Yeah, because one of the biggest things that you can forget is you have to move fast and you have to just go for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very important.
I think particularly with the advances in the large language models, like my feeling is there's a window of opportunity in the education space for us or whoever to capitalize on it. And the key thing is how can we do that as quickly as possible while maintaining the quality of the learning journey and while using AI in smart ways, because there's so much hype, so much noise in the space now that you're kind of having to keep your head and just say, right, what are the core use cases for our product and for the business model, and how can we effectively integrate them into the way we work?
And then just keep refining them and improving them, because I question why people are running off to these different use cases. Like they're really solid use cases. Just keep getting really effective at getting 1 inch closer to the next step, because that's where you delight your customers.
Yes.
And just staying on that journey. And then, I think it's a great phrase, keeping your head. To Deirdre Lyons, really wishing you the very, very best of luck with your trip into North America, and I'm sure you guys are going to be very, very successful. Thank you very much for joining us on the AI Ireland podcast.
Thanks so much, Mark. Lovely to chat to you.
At AI Ireland, we're helping over 1 million people become literate using artificial intelligence. And we do this in a variety of different ways. The easiest way is our AI literacy program, where we do a 60 to 90 minute program via virtual Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where we teach the rules of the road of AI, from basic business concepts to ethical and resourceful decisions on how you actually use AI every day. This is our literacy foundation. The second way we use AI training is within our workshops. These are either virtual or in-person workshops where executive leaders come and use some of the AI tools that we make available for them, that they can actually start to take their own documents and reimagine savings of time and energy, but taking away friction from the work that they do each day. Later on, we actually empower different departments, HR, finance, sales, marketing, operations, and start to utilize AI across relevant use cases to upskill their different types of departments. If you're interested and ready to go on your AI journey, we'll be able to showcase over 700 applications of applied AI about how you can actually stop reinventing the wheel and start using AI for your organization today. If you want to start out and find out a little bit about the golden thread of activities that we've got to allow you to start to utilize AI straight away, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you a good comprehensive overview about the arts of the possible, minus the hype, purely applied. See you then.